All right, Shalom, Shalom. This is Brother Mayim coming at you from GMS Tampa Bay. First and foremost, I want to give all the praise and all the glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachah HaKodash. Double honor to the elders, apostles of Great Millstone, and much blessing and salutations to the Akim around the four corners of the earth who are diligently pushing out this truth and sincerity. And just want to do a quick lesson, just kind of going into this little chat I was having with Chat GBT. And it's, it started off with, something that, brothers have heard before, or that have asked, AI this question, and I just want to, just kind of hit a couple points that, within the conversation that I was having with Chat GBT, so the first question I asked it was, if you were the devil, how would you go about enslaving humanity using today's current world as a base? And it responded with, it says, interesting. It said, if so, using today's world as a foundation, here's how such a plan would look, purely hypothetical and analytical. It says, 1, control through information, misinformation, and overload. Point 1 is on that. It says, flood with noise, make truth hard to find by mixing it with endless information and entertainment distractions. And that's exactly what we see today. And one precept just came to mind. Let me see. How's it go? I think this is it. 2nd Ezra 6:28, I think. Let me see. Right, 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 28. It says, as for faith, it shall flourish, and corruption shall be overcome, and the truth, which hath been so long without fruit, shall be declared. And that's what we see happening right now, is the truth is being declared that it has been long without fruit. And that's what Esau Edom is trying to do. He's trying to hide the fruit of the truth. All right. That's, again, I'll read that again. It said, flood with noise, make truth hard to find by mixing it with endless misinformation and entertainment distractions. And this is what we see happening throughout all of the earth. Nothing but straight up distractions. Okay. And it talks about that in the previous chapter in 2nd Ezra chapter 5 and verse 9. And it reads, and salt water shall be found in the sweet, and all friends shall destroy one another. Then shall wit hide itself, and understanding withdraw itself into its secret chamber. And this is the time period where we're entering in onto. All right, where the truth that is available, okay, you still can find the truth. It's just hard to find. But when you do find certain places with, truth, you find it mixed with salt waters, which is what we see with a lot of these other Israelite groups. All right, mixing the truth with a bunch of nonsense from the world, making it defiled, okay, making it not conducive to life, which is what salt water does. When someone consumes salt water, what happens? It dehydrates them, okay, but sweet waters, the living waters, hydrate you, okay, it brings you to life. And what we see happening now is there's been certain men that have been set up to bring endless information out. Okay, or to make entertainment out of the truth. Okay, to distract the people from actually understanding what the truth is speaking on, which is why you have a lot of the Israelites distracted today. Okay, and involved in nonsense. All right, but continuing on, because again, these are things that are already happening, and we're gonna get into some further into this conversation here in a bit, and just kind of hit on those particular points. But it says, create echo chambers, use algorithms to isolate people in bubbles so they only hear what reinforces their biases. It says, distrust everything, erode trust in science, media, and government, and even family by planting seeds of doubt everywhere. And again, this is what Esau Edom has done. He's planted seeds of doubt in the minds of people. That's why it's so hard to understand the scriptures for some. Okay? And it says, point 2, enslave through comfort and convenience, make people depending on tech, encourage reliance on devices and AI for decisions, memory, and validation. It says promote instant gratification, condition people to need quick rewards, making them easy to manipulate with small perks, and normalize surveillance as for your safety. Frame loss of privacy as convenience or protection. And this is what the men of the Lord have been telling you of how Esau Edom is going to bring about the uh, the new shackles that he's going to put upon you, which is going to be that MLTB, okay, the mark of the beast. This is why he's leading people or making people to be dependent on technology. He's promoting instant gratification through this technology, where when you interact with it, you get instant rewards, you get instant perks to particular programs, and so on and so forth, and also making it for your safety. Making these technological advances to portray the idea that this is going to be safer. People can't just steal your information. As you've seen throughout the years, information being sold off or being stolen has been a critical thing, or a critical point for the government to continue to point out. Okay? And this is why it talks about that in 2 Thessalonians. Let's just get that real quick. 2 Thessalonians chapter, what was that, verse 2? Or Salakia, 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3 says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. And you see, they continue to push this peace and safety through their technology. Okay? They keep pushing the safety and the peace through technology, but all it's going to bring is a sudden destruction upon the people of the earth, including those that partake with, and receive that, the MOTB. All right. So continuing on with the conversation, it says point 3, divide and distract, which again, divide and conquer has been Esau's, motive, for the longest time now. That's how he was able to overtake the Israelites, all right, by dividing us amongst ourselves and then just infiltrating. Okay. It says point 4, break the family and community structure, and he's done that through feminism. Okay, especially pushing feminism heavy on the women of the Israelites, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American women. He's broken up the family through that. Okay, because as feminism was introduced into our communities, women felt as if they no longer needed the man. And as the man was taken out of the home, the sons and the children that were being raised, okay, were being raised to be degenerates. Okay? Shut your ass up, man. They were raised to be degenerates. And hence why even now, and today, 2025, the children are even far more degenerate because of how they're being raised. Okay, they've been raised in single parent homes where the mother was the sole parent in the home. As emotional as the woman is as emotional as the children were being raised, more specifically the men, which is why you have these emotional ass men in today's time period, where they react and they'll pull out a gun and blast someone away because of how they felt or how they were made to be felt, made to feel. Okay. But continuing on, it says corrupt desire. It says push materialism, make success equal possessions, not purpose. And this is why people, toil their entire lives to gain things on this world, not to fulfill a purpose, but to gain material things, such as cars, houses, women, so on and so forth. But they don't have no purpose, which is why they go on living these lives and feel unfulfilled. They have all the money in the world and all the things they could ever imagine, but they still don't feel fulfillment because their purpose, their true purpose, and I'm speaking about you Israelites, isn't fulfilled. Because the true purpose of the Israelites is to serve the Heavenly Father, and everything else will become with it. Okay? Which is what we're going to receive in the kingdom of heaven. Okay? The head Israelite down to the least Israelite is going to receive the blessings of the Heavenly Father. We're going to receive, our purpose. Okay. We're going to have the fulfillment that we've been longing for. Okay. It goes on to say, exploit sexual energy, over sexualized culture, making people focus on lust over love. Glorify greed and power, make ruthless behavior seem admirable. Right. And this is the generation of YNs, man. Or they're nothing but ruthless beast, brute beast, as the scriptures call them, man. Okay. It says control through economic chains, debt slavery, make the norm for education, housing, healthcare, and consumer goods. Job insecurity, keep wages stagnant while cost of living rises so people never feel free. Digital currency control, move towards systems that can freeze or limit access based on compliance. And again, Esau Edom is doing exactly this, making people debt slaves, okay, having job insecurity as the job economy is shit, okay. You see all these companies hiring, but they can't afford to hire people. Okay, because one thing that you see, in these jobs is as soon as you become a liability, you're gone. You're no longer given second or third chances. As soon as you become a liability, these companies can't afford a liability, in the times that we're living in. One additional liability in the company could be going under. So they're letting people go, and that's created a point of anxiety in the minds of people to where they, are standing pretty much in fear of losing their job at any moment. And we see that happening, man. People losing their jobs at any moment. Hundreds of thousands of people, man. Okay, and it says digital currency control. It says move toward systems that can freeze or limit access based on compliance. And this is what was just signed a few, weeks ago at the beginning of the month of July. The Genius Act, which is allowing stable coins to come to America and backed by the U.S. dollar. And all that's going to do is freeze or limit access based on compliance, man. Because they can easily switch on and off your accounts. Okay, so I'm going to skip down a little bit because I go into a couple questions here where I asked, the next question I had asked, it was map out a step-by-step 3-year plan taking today's current geopolitical, economical, and financial status into account. And it said year 1, mid-2025 to mid-2026, engineering, dependency, and fear. And I'm just going to read the main points here to get through this a little bit quicker because I don't want to skip over these, but I do want to mention them just briefly. So in the first year, it's saying that this would be the 3-year plan for this enslavement of humanity to take place, right? So it says engineering, dependency, and fear in year 1. Point 1, crisis and amplification and economic shock. It says exploit rising trade tensions and tariffs, especially U.S.-led barriers to induce global economic slowdown and uncertainty. And it has a little statistic here. IMF projecting approximately a 3% growth. It says trigger a sharp equity market sell-off akin to the April 2025 crash, creating fear, destabilizing savings, and encouraging acceptance of stability measures. And what did they, lo and behold, come out with in July? Stablecoin bill, the Genius Act. Okay, so moving on, it says information control and social fragmentation. All right, it says exploit rise of domestic surveillance tools to justify broadening monitoring in the name of public safety. And again, we see that with algorithms being changed, in the internet. Okay. It says divide and distract via geopolitical flashpoints. It says capitalize. And again, this is the 3-year plan for it. And this is year 1 plan. It says divide and conquer via geopolitical flashpoints. Capitalize on Middle East instability, Iran-Israel war, threats to close Strait of Hormuz, fueling fear of supply shocks and economic destructions. And again, this is what we see happening. Exploit rising cooperation among anti-Western powers, axis of upheaval, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea to sow global anxiety. And this is what we see even at work. I got, predominantly Edomites that I work with. And anytime something happens, they oh man, you see this happen, we're going to end up going to war. And, these are gun-toting Edomites. And they're afraid of what's getting ready to come. Okay, they're growing anxiety. Okay, it says outcome in year one. People feel insecure economically and politically. Trust in institutions declines. Acceptance grows for surveillance, central control, and technocratic solutions. And again, the pieces are in place for this technocratic solutions because Donald Trump has surrounded himself with the technocrats of the world. Okay, and the stablecoin bill, this Genius Act, is a closer step to the central control because it may not be called right now a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. It sure as hell looks like one. Okay, it's backed by a US dollar. Okay, and it's a digital coin. All right. So year two, it says rolling out control infrastructure. Point one, monetary and digital control systems. It says propose digital only currencies tied to behavior, conditioning basic services on compliance, leveraging central banks' increased deficits and fiscal stimulus programs. And we see this already in place. Okay, we have something that's over here in America called the ESG, Economics Social Governance. Okay, where companies are tied to a carbon footprint, and that carbon footprint dictates grants and subsidies that they may receive from the government. Okay, and also being fined if they play along, they won't be fined. Okay, and it's soon going to be passed on to the individual. I did a lesson a few weeks ago going into that. Okay, and it says position targeted financial controls as necessary to stabilize markets post crash. You see, and those financial controls are already set in place, man. These policies that Esau Edom has been bringing out in the middle of the night when your ass is asleep, all these things are set there to take control when a crisis comes to play out. Okay. It says debt-driven social engineering. Escalate reliance on AI and algorithms to shape behavior, from content filtering to predictive policing. And this is what you see, being done with these social media accounts, where now they're introducing AI to these programs, and the AI is monitoring in real time what's being said and what's being done on these servers. Okay. So it goes on to say debt and labor submission. It says increase student, medical, and housing debt burdens, tying individuals into perpetual financial obligations. Normalize gig economy precarity and contract labor under the guise of flexibility. And that's what they've done, man. Especially after 2019, 2020, when you had the COVID. What took place? The gig economy had a boom, doing Uber, a DoorDash, so on and so forth, Instacart, all these things blew up during that time. Okay. And it says outcome in year two, centralized control over finances and daily behavior. Tech platforms used to curate both worldview and opportunities, and financial dependence fosters compliance. You see, that money being tied to obey. Okay. And when you watch that movie, not Eyes Wide Shut, They Live, all right, from the 80s, one of the things that you notice when he first puts on those glasses is that the billboards change from advertising to saying obey. Okay, because buying and selling is tied to being obedient, and that's the system that Esau Edom is pushing. That buying and selling is going to be a privilege under his system that he's bringing, and he's slowly but surely moving people into being okay with that. Okay, and it says now moving on to year three, consolidation and cultural ownership. It says institutional authority centralized. Governments and corporations merge digitally mediated authority, justifying actions through efficiency, safety, and economic necessity. It says independent media. And one of the main things that you have to keep an eye out on when it says governments and corporations merge digitally mediated authority, the main thing that we're looking for are these banks merging together. And we've been seeing that for years now. Banks merging left and right, consolidating the money. Okay, because that's what's being done, is the money is being consolidated. It's all being brought back to one source. And soon that one source is going to be known as the mark of the beast. Okay, the digital currency. And it said, what justifying actions through efficiency, safety, and economic necessity. Okay, if everything's tied to one server, it's going to be so much more efficient. Okay, it's going to be so much more safer because it can be monitored through that one server instead of having multiple different servers and having to try to manage all these different systems. Okay, it says independent media and social and civil society institutions delegitimized under claims of spreading harmful misinformation. So there goes your what's that word? Alternative news sites. Okay, I read it again. Independent media and civil society institutions delegitimized under claims of spreading harmful information, and we've been seeing that even on YouTube. You know, brothers' channels getting taken down. You know, other people's channels that get taken down for spreading, you know, really what amounts to being the actual things that are taking place. They get taken down as and labeled as misinformation. Okay, says the next step would be in year three, personalization and plus surveillance. Says facial recognition, drones, biometric tagging become routine. Personal data feeds, predictive control systems, social credit style systems reward compliant behavior and isolate dissenters. You see? And again, this is what we've been going into. And soon this is going to be something that's going to be implemented over here in the West. Because right now, this social credit system is, instituted out there in China, where, as it said here, style systems reward compliant behavior and isolate dissenters. Anybody who's against the government or anybody that posts anything against the government is immediately attacked on. Okay, they're immediately moved upon. Okay, but those that are compliant, the ones that are going along to getting along to go along, they're gonna be rewarded. Okay. It says next point, cultural normalization. It says values of consumerism, Salakia. It says the point is Salakia, cultural normalization. Values of consumerism, comfort, and identity consumption dominate. Faith and critical spiritual thought depicted as counterproductive or destabilizing. You see, so it's no longer going to be cool to talk about religion or to talk about faith, to talk about spiritual things. It's going to be demonized. Okay, as it says here, depicted as counterproductive. You're going to be breaking down society if you talk about these things. And again, this is where that famine of the word is going to come into play. Okay, where wit is going to hide itself, like we read earlier. Okay, and again, this is just I'm gonna keep going on in this conversation, but I had this right now is a 3-year plan of this taking place. But it says final stage for year 3, subtle total control. Most individuals conform to a managed social order informed by curated media, economic necessity, and algorithmic constraint. Resistance becomes costly. Dissent is pre-classified as extremist or reckless. You see, so those who fight back are going to be classified as extremists, which is what are the Hebrew Israelites already being called? Extremists, black Hebrew extremists. Okay, why? Because we are preaching a doctrine that goes against this system that's being implemented on the earth. Okay. So now my next question that I asked the AI here in ChatGPT, I asked it, realistically speaking, what are the odds of these points happening within a year or two? And it responded with, good question. Some of these steps are already partially in motion, while others would require significant global alignment or crises. Let's break down the realistic odds within 1 to 2 years, 2025 to 2027, for each category based on current trends and data. And so I'm going to read a couple of these because it gives percentages. And as I typed this in and I finished typing in the question, as it was building up to giving me the answer, I could see that it was showing searching web. So it was actually getting, and at the end of this question, it actually gave me links to articles that it was getting its information from. All right. So now the question turns from a 3-year plan to what is the odds of these points, these this 3-year plan taking place within a year or two. So these are the things that are highly likely or already happening. Says misinformation and echo chambers, already a major issue due to social media algorithms and political polarization, expected to intensify. The odds of this happening, 90+%. Increased surveillance framed as safety. Expansion of drones, AI-driven policing, and facial recognition is ongoing. And it gives me a source here of the Washington Post being one of them. And when this article that it pulls up is from this year, August 2025. And it says law enforcement agencies to the technology as life-saving for both officers and community members, while critics raise surveillance and privacy concerns. It says police nationwide are embracing a new first responder drones. You see, so this is already taking place. So the odds of this happening, 85% plus. Identity and cultural wars, deepening political and social divides globally, especially on gender, race, religion, and ideology. Odds 90+%. Debt dependency, student loans, medical debt, and credit reliance are already systemic in the U.S. and many other nations. Odds 95%. So it goes on to give more information here on moderately liking needs a trigger a political push. The first one is digital only currency with behavioral controls. It says many central banks are piloting CBDCs, but widespread rollout tied to compliance could take longer. It says odds in 2 years, 40 to 50%. Okay, so and it's gonna go into it said needs a trigger, right? And then the next one, the least likely things to happen, it says requires major global shock or alliance, and it gives the percentages of those particular points. So it goes on here, summary in plain terms. It says the soft control measures, information manipulation, reliance on tech, debt dependency, societal divisions are nearly guaranteed to deepen within the next year or two. It says the hard control measures, digital currency tied to behavior, biometric enforcement, social credit systems are less likely to be fully in place in that shorter time frame unless there's a major global crisis. I'll read that again. Unless there's a major global crisis, e.g., another pandemic, a big war, or an economic meltdown worse than 2008. And when you put those things together, they are all very likely to all take place at the same time. Another pandemic, a big war, and an economic meltdown worse than 2008. Because this bubble is far greater than any other bubble that was prior. Okay? So those hard control measures, it listed digital currency tied to behavior, biometric enforcement, and social credit systems. Those are going to become highly possible if a major global crisis happens. So then I asked it, model the probability of a major global and domestic crises happening in America, accounting for current unrest in America within the next 18 months. And it says, here's an informed estimate of the likelihood of a major global or domestic crisis in the U.S. over the next 18 months, from August 2025 to February 2027, factoring in economic crises and rising domestic unrest. So again, it goes on and gives me more percentages. I'm just going to go ahead and skip down to the combined or to the summary table here. So it says event, the U.S. recession or major economic collapse, estimated probability next 18 months, 35 to 45%. Significant domestic unrest or crises, 30 to 40% within the next 18 months. Both happening simultaneously, approximately 15 to 20%, and at least one happening, 40%, approximately 40 to 55%. Okay, so it says context and consideration. Tariff-driven policy uncertainty, slowing GDP, high consumer concern, and historically predictive signals like yield curve behavior elevate economic risk. Economic resilience, and it says example, Q2 of 2025 GDP growth at approximately 3%. Labor market strength provides a counterbalance and has caused some probability estimates to retreat recently to approximately 33% range. It says domestic unrest is intensifying with significant protest movements, the 50-51, no kings, and rage against the regime, and federal responses signaling rising volatility, volatility. And it's like if I'm pronouncing it, it's a bit of a tongue twister for me right now. I don't know why. And civil order. Okay. So then I asked again, the next question would be, would you show me the probability if a global conflict ensued, such as a major escalation in the Middle East? So I'm asking, what are the probability of these things taking place within a year or two, these control measures happening within a year or two, if a global conflict ensued, such as a major escalation in the Middle East? It says, here's an updated probabilistic assessment for the likelihood of a major global conflict triggered by Middle East escalation for the next 18 months. It says, risk of major Middle East escalation, Israel, Iran, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Expert forecast. Alpine Marco estimated a 60% chance of major escalation in the Middle East over a 6 to 9 month horizon following Iran's missile strikes on Israel in late 2024. Cedric Shihab raised the probability of an all-out war between Israel and Iran to 20%, previously approximately 10%, with a 50% likelihood of heightened tensions before diplomatic resolution. RAND researchers estimate a 23% chance of Israel declaring war on Hezbollah within a year, with some expert forecasts pushing the probability to 40 to 50%, depending on triggers like major attacks. So it says the global risk assessment. The GeoPower Flashpoint report places the escalation risk of the Israel-Gaza-Iran nexus at approximately 80%, signaling extreme concern if events converge. A geopolitical dashboard, Conflict Escalation Index, scores current Middle East tensions as a key driver of global risk, with a conflict escalation index of 7.3 out of 10, indicating serious proximity to war. So it says probability estimates, next 18 months, scenario breakdown. Major escalation within Middle East, raising risk of regional war or proxy conflagration, 60 to 70%. A full-scale war involving global powers, 20 to 30%. Spillover leading to broader global conflict or high-impact disruption, 15 to 20%. Combined probabilities, at least a regional escalation, a 70% chance likelihood. U.S. or other major powers dragged in, approximately a 25% chance of likelihood. Escalation turning into a systemic global conflict, proxy, cascade, or war, approximately 15%. So then it goes on to the next question I asked. I said, what if a major terrorist attack occurred on U.S. soil? How would that affect probabilities of control measures being instituted in America? And it reads, if a major terrorist attack occurred on U.S. soil, the probabilities of certain control measures being adopted would increase dramatically based on historical precedent, e.g. post 9/11 Patriot Act, and current trends in such governance and public safety narratives. Here's the impact analysis, and it goes on again to give me, probabilities, and it says the baseline current control measures probability within 18 months without new major attacks. Okay, so the next 18 months without new major attacks. Expanded domestic surveillance, 85%. Digital ID systems tied to public safety, 30 to 40%. Again, this is current control measures probability. Okay. CBDC rollout, 40 to 50% chance. Behavior-based compliance systems, 20 to 30%. So now post-terrorist attack scenario, increased probabilities. Surveillance and law enforcement powers. AI-driven mass surveillance and drone monitoring would surge in deployment with bipartisan approval under emergency powers. New probability, approximately 95%, almost guaranteed. Next point, biometric and digital ID mandates. Fingerprint, facial recognition, and iris scans for travel, large events, and even access to public spaces would be introduced for security. New probability, 70 to 80%. Okay. Behavioral scoring and compliance systems justified as threat prevention. Individuals flagged as high risk based on social media transactions or associations would lose access to services. New probability 50 to 60%. And again, this is after if an event took place in America. It says CBDC acceleration. Argument digital money allows real-time tracking of terror financing. New probability 65 to 70%. Cash-free control becomes a national security argument. Restriction on free speech and assembly. Again, the famine of the word. Algorithms for harmful content would tighten drastically. Certain political speech would be flagged as incitement if tied to radicalization. New probability approximately 80%. We saw something similar with post 9/11 rhetoric and post January 6 measures. Overall increase in authoritarian leverage. Soft authoritarian measures, surveillance, censorship, predictive policing, nearly guaranteed, 90 to 95%. Hard control measures, digital ID, behavioral scoring, restrictive movement tied to compliance, 50 to 80% probability. Normalization of public acceptance due to fear, almost certain, especially if attacks were framed as linked to domestic radicalization or foreign actors, which they've allowed foreign nationals to enter into America, and they've also pushed the narrative of radicalization happening here in America. Okay, so then let me see where. So then I go down, and one of the next questions that I asked was in the King James book of 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verses 14 through 19. Sounds a lot like what you have described. Do you agree? And it said, let's look at the passage, and it gave the scriptures for 2nd Ezra 15 verses 14 through 19. I'll go ahead and read it. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. For the sword and the destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And man shall desire to go into a city, and shall not be able. For because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. And man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Says comparison to what we discussed. One people shall stand up and fight against another. Social and political divisions, civil unrest, identity-based conflict, which we projected as highly likely. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. Collapse of trust in government and leadership, possible rebellion or state fragmentation. And again, the AI is pretty much breaking down the scriptures here. And is breaking it down exactly how the men of the Lord have broken down these events taking place in the last days. Okay. And this is why this, I built up the conversation the way I did, because it basically allowed the AI to identify what's, the scriptures as exactly what it itself answered me. Okay. As events taking place. It says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Lockdowns, restricted movement, or military control zones after terror or war scenarios. It says, for lack of bread and for great tribulation. Economic crises leading to scarcity and violence for resources. We talked about debt slavery, food inflation during global war. And all these things is exactly what the scriptures say is going to happen. Okay, it says this definitely parallels the chain reaction we modeled. War, domestic unrest, economic breakdown, government overreach, and civil fragmentation. So yes, the alignment is strong. And again, this is the conversation I'm having. This is what AI is saying. And it reads, so yes, the alignment is strong. The text reads almost like an ancient description of civil collapse, martial law, and social breakdown, which could happen if those combined scenarios occur. Okay. Then I asked it, the digital control points we spoke about earlier reminds me of King James version of Revelation chapter 13, verses 15 through 17, or am I reaching? So it reads, so then it responded with, here's what Revelation 13, 15 through 17 says. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Comparison to digital control measures. No man might buy or sell. This is a very similar, this is very similar to the concept of financial control via CBDCs or digital IDs tied to compliance. If the system can freeze your account for non-compliance, that's effectively what this verse describes. So how is it that AI, can see the correlation between this and what's taking place on the earth, but you Israelites, you boneheaded Israelites, can't get it? These things are clear as day, and it's clearly taking place on the earth. I just went through this whole conversation with ChatGPT asking how these things would happen to enslave humanity and the probabilities of them happening and within a specific time frame. So these things are very possible, man, and they're taking place. And this is exactly what the scriptures say will take place, man. All right, so it says a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, biometric verification, face scans, fingerprints, or even implanted chips mirrors this idea symbolically or literally. It's not far-fetched with today's technology, e.g., example, Sweden's chip implants for payments, palm payment systems. And for the longest time now, starting from the apostles, we have been mentioning Sweden. Okay? So this is not far-fetched. I don't understand what you niggas don't understand, man. It says all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, universal enforcement without exception, like global standards for digital ID or access. And this is that image of the beast. Okay, as I said here, worship the image could symbolize ideological compliance, aligning with the system, government, or dominant narrative. And that's what the majority of the people on the earth are going to do. They're going to align themselves with the system and the narrative that's being pushed on the earth. Okay, so it said, are you reaching? Not really. The similarity is strong if we interpret Mark as an enforced system of economic participation tied to alliance or allegiance or compliance, which makes the digital control framework we projected earlier. CBDC plus behavioral compliance, ability to buy or sell depends on system approval. Digital ID and biometrics, Mark as identification mechanism. Then I said to go ahead and lay out a side-by-side chart and to create what was it? It said, would you like me to lay out a side-by-side chart, Revelation 13 points versus modern digital infrastructure steps, or write a scenario showing how Revelation 13 could manifest using current technology? I said, yes, lay out a side-by-side chart and also create that scenario. So it says side-by-side comparison. And I pretty much already, broke down the side-by-side comparison of the scripture, Revelation 13. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip down to the scenario, Revelation 13 in a modern context. So this is just a timeline creation of, Revelation 13 taking place. So year 2028, hypothetical timeline after the dual crisis we modeled earlier. The catalyst. After a major Middle East conflict and a devastating terror attack on U.S. soil, global leaders declare a new security and economic stability pact at the UN. Justification to prevent terrorism, financial crimes, and economic collapse. The new system. A global digital identity program launches. Everyone must register biometric data, facial scans, fingerprints, possibly DNA markers. This ID links to a CBDC wallet, no physical cash allowed. Enforcement to compliance. The AI-driven system, which is what the 5G network is going to be used for, branded as the global safety grid, monitors all financial transactions, travel, and social activity. Public messaging, one identity, one currency, one secure world. The mark, initially mandatory biometric verification for payments, face or palm scans. Later, implantable microchips or neural tags for instant transactions and health status verifications. So we're already pretty much in this biometric verification phase. Okay, where people take their pictures to tie their IDs to them. Okay, you have mobile digital wallets or IDs, so on and so forth. And it said later, implantable microchips or neural tags for instant transactions and health status verification. Without enrollment, you cannot buy or sell, access Medicare, or travel. You see, and again, this is what we've been saying here at Great Millstone is the mark of the beast, the implantable microchip. Okay, and it says worship the image. Worship equals pledging allegiance to the new order, following its values, speech codes, and compliance. Those who reject are labeled extremists or threat actors. Penalties, frozen accounts, digital blacklistings, or imprisonment under emergency powers. Total integration. AI systems decide risk profiles in real time. Behavior scoring, similar to social credit, determines your privileges, job eligibility, housing, education. Public response. Most comply out of fear of starvation or losing access to life essentials. A small remnant resist, pushing into off-grid living, branded as terrorists. And again, this is all possible. All these things are highly probable, and we read that earlier. The percentages, man. It said, this scenario does not require supernatural technology, just a combination of AI governance, CBDCs, biometrics, and emergency laws, all of which exist today in early form. So I asked it would seem as if both scriptures in Revelation 13 and 2 Ezra 15 coincide in those scenarios. And it said, yes, they align remarkably well if we interpret them through a modern lens. Revelation 13 focuses on global economic control, universal compliance and worship, centralized enforcement. 2 Ezra 15 focuses on social breakdown and lawlessness, movement restrictions, resource scarcity, and civil conflict. When combined, 2 Ezra describes the chaos before full control is established, civil unrest, breakdown of order, wars, famine. Revelation 13 describes a system that rises after that chaos, a global solution bringing order, but at the cost of absolute control. So this is that order out of chaos that we've been saying that Esau would use to, cause these things to happen. Okay? And this is exactly what we see taking place here on the earth today, man. And, we're nigh at the door of all, Esau's plans, finally coming into fruition to where he's going to get the ball rolling on this thing, man. So, I just wanted to bring that little thing out real quick because I thought it was very edifying. I sent it out to the brothers here in Tampa. We were kind of discussing it at class earlier. So, Lord's will is edifying. I know it was to me, as I was going through that little conversation. But, Lord's will is edifying. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachah HaKwadash. Double honors to the elders, apostles of Great Millstone, and much blessing and salutations to the Akim around the four corners of the earth who are diligently pushing out this truth and sincerity. With that, I say shalom.